We are joined now by Nick Roush of Kentucky Sports Radio. And Nick, Mark Stoops seriously considered leaving the best job in college football. We got to talk about this.
Yeah, we got to talk about this. It was a heck of a day, Andy, but I do think a lot of it started. I got some weird vibes out of that South Carolina game. We walk out of the press conference and we see Mark Stoops sitting on the ground talking with Eddie Gran, the former offensive coordinator, who's kind of his old head, kind of a guy he bounces ideas off of. Exactly. And he's sitting there just head on his hand, just looking exasperated because that loss was a terrible, terrible loss. And the way things had been adding up, they're 2-7 in their last 9 SEC home games. They had back-to-back years where Kentucky fans thought 8, 9, 10 wins, in with 7-5 seasons and losing record in SEC play. You thought things were kind of coming together where the Jenga tower, somebody was going to pull a block out, and that South Carolina game was going to make it all fall down. And so that kind of started a lot of stuff where you're kind of putting things together, and you're like, something's going on here. We might think that Mark Stoops is on his way out.
Well, and you and I texted midweek. I think it was the night before Thanksgiving. I was making mac and cheese for Thanksgiving dinner.
Ooh,
and somebody had sent me a text, and it was a list of potential Texas A&M names. And I knew 2 of them, and Stoops was the other one, and I hadn't heard that yet. So I text you, hey, have you heard anything about this? And you guys at Kentucky Sports Radio, of course, we're on this already, and you'd been tracking it all week. And when did it dawn that it was actually serious, that there was actual conversation going on?
Like you, I did not want to step away from the sweet potatoes on Thanksgiving Day, but we did have to get on the phone with some folks, and it was just enough to make you think that something about this time was different. There had been some retirement rumors that were swirling. He mentioned that he had to get something for his ticker, right? He comes from a family with heart issues. His dad passed away.
Not a joking master, coaching a game. So yeah.
So there was, those retirement rumors were out there. I got good intel, and those were refuted. But the way it was worded, it's like, well, something else might be going on here. And that conversation that we had, Andy, and then reaching out to other people, you're like, oh, this isn't just your normal Jimmy Sexton work. This is
right.
This is real. And then it's almost like somebody pulled the cord on Saturday morning, and the football game just served as a nice 4-hour distraction, because from that point forward, it was full steam ahead. Something's going down. What's it going to be? It ended up being even crazier than we all expected.
Well, and what makes this so fascinating to me is I call Kentucky the best job in America. And the reason I call it the best job in America is because they will pay you like a national title contender, but they don't expect you to be a national title contender.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M does, but the salary scale is not as such that somebody could leave a job like Kentucky. I think any pretty good SEC or Big Ten job, like, you're not going to get a commensurate pay bump relative to the pressure bump that you would get. And that's what made this, that's what made this so weird, is because I would assume you're going to get something more, but it doesn't necessarily justify the level of pressure. Because like when you go to A&M, you're going to be expected to win 10, 11, 12 games a year. They fired Jimbo Fisher for not doing that. And so that's where it seems strange to me. But then, so let's talk Stoops' contract. He makes an average of $9 million a year in this deal, which runs through 2030. It's 75% guaranteed. So if they were to fire him for cause, like right now, it'd be $45 million. So you're talking about a contract that is not all that different from the one Texas A&M just bought out, which I think ultimately was what happened when they present that contract. Because from what I understand, Stoops was never actually offered the job. It was kind of pending Board of Regents approval of a contract. The Board of Regents looked at the contract. We're like, this is way too close to the Jimbo thing, and it's not Ryan Day. It's not what they would consider a slam dunk hire. There would be questions about Stoops. And so that's where it sort of stopped. And then you get the message from Stoops, hey, I'm staying. and A&M goes back to the search.
Yeah, and there was always something about this job that, I mean, fit, right? Like Mark Stoops certainly has the he's raised the floor at the University of Kentucky.
Absolutely.
The amount of investment that he's gotten into this football program is unprecedented. So it's not that he isn't a proven commodity in this league, in this conference, playing against a challenging schedule. But it is the fact that he is the Midwest coach that's coaching the northernmost SEC program. Going to Texas would be a little different. I know Bob had a ton of success at Oklahoma, but it would be different. And I know that the other part of this too is that, you were tired of the Jimbo style, the bad offense, and his last job was with Jimbo coaching defense. So that part of it always felt a little weird, a little off to me. But it did make sense from Stoops' perspective, I think, that there wouldn't have been a better time for him to walk away, to go knock off a top 10 Louisville team, got another 7-5 season, and then the table's kind of set for the next guy to where he wouldn't have felt bad. It would have felt like a step up going to A&M. So I think the timing would have worked out well, but I don't think the fit did. And to go back to your talk about how Kentucky's the best job in America, right? Like that's always going to be hard because for whatever the next school is going to be to hire him because of what he's paid at Kentucky. And what's funny, you mentioned it, Andy, is that there's not national championship expectations, but there is kind of A&M expectations now where fans are expecting 9-3 and 8-4, right?
Yeah, and Stoops has done that to himself, which, look, that's why he's getting all that money. He's done a great job of increasing everyone's expectations. And, it's interesting because I go back to what he said after the Georgia game, where he was talking about, they got the NIL money, they can do all this. And I do wonder how much of it is for his own edification, for his own information. Does he want to know what it would be like if he was at a place like that? And could he take that next step? I would imagine that's a pretty natural inclination for somebody in his position.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, I also think that when you're just at a place for 11 years, that is so hard to do in this day and age in college football. And so much has changed. The pressures of the job, like there's just a lot. Fatigue is probably the right word, but that's when all of this was happening Saturday night and people were already creating their hot boards to figure out who would be the next coach. There's part of the fan base that gets a little excited for it. The last time there was a coaching search, I was a 22-year-old intern, and now I'm the guy who's been doing this for more than a decade, who's got a couple of kids, right? Like it's just so I think fatigue a lot played into just the kind of weariness where you have 2 seasons where you fall short, and I think Stoops was looking around, keeping his head on a swivel, seeking out a sort of reset button, and you know what, maybe getting getting called by the rich hot chick down in Texas, maybe that's enough to help kind of like, all right, let's shake this off and let's get our groove back.
Well, and how much of beating Louisville under those particular circumstances plus this can be its own reset button?
Oh, it certainly can, because I know there was a lot of the glaring issues within the program. Offensive line play hasn't been up to stuff. You had these talented receivers. You finally think your offense is taking a step forward, and they seemingly just have sophomore slumps for most of the year. Finding a quarterback. Kentucky hasn't had a 3,000-yard passer in the Mark Stoops era. That's not a very high bar. You have to be able to score. You can't just score 14 points in a road game against that South Carolina defense.
So, that Texas A&M Board of Regents decision is starting to make a lot of sense as you read those off. So,
but there's some big offensive problems, and there was a lot of chatter in Lexington about like the locker room and do people have confidence that Stoops can get this turned around? When you win like that, and then you see the biggest job opening, and you have this sort of I don't even know how to exactly describe just how close that was to happening. I mean, that was unprecedented, right? Like there's so much happening at once that when you come back and you kind of exhale, there should be a lot of hope and belief that, listen, that was nuts. That was a wild day, But you know what? We can turn that into positive. We can get this train back on the tracks because there is a lot of energy now, kind of shot in the arm in the program that for the next months. You can use that to go make out like gangbusters in the transfer portal.
Well, and I thought it was interesting because while this Texas A&M search has been pretty herky-jerky, they clearly fired Jimbo without really a set board of who they wanted. If Mark Stoops had left Kentucky, Mitch Barnhart, the dean of SEC ADs, sounds like he was ready to roll. Like they had it locked and loaded.
Yeah. John Summerall, he played and coached for Rich Brooks. He coached with Mark Stoops. He's an excellent recruiter. He's 22-4 in his first 2 years at Troy, only 41 years old. And he's got a great relationship with Brad White. There had been hope that he could keep some of that continuity there. He would have been a pretty easy hire, I think. Of course, they'd kick the tires on the usual suspects. I think Liam Cohen would also be in consideration if he didn't just hop with Stoops to A&M. But the timing to make that happen, it felt like the stars were aligning. Summerall is definitely, though, I know he gets thrown in a lot of those in the mix for a lot of those. Feels like he's going to be kind of like a Billy Napier, Andy, where he just can kind of wait out to pick the right SEC job whenever it opens because he's got Troy rocking and rolling.
Maybe not the right name to say right now to folks in the SEC East, but I don't know that John wants to be compared there. But you're right; it is exactly like Billy
Napier.
What
I mean. Yeah.
No, it's exactly like Billy Napier at Lafayette, and it's a good place to be because people will just keep throwing more money at you as the years go by. But Mark Stoops, same thing. I think he's built a great thing at Kentucky. And whether this was all A&M's decision, all Mark Stoops' decision, or somewhere in the middle, which is probably where it was.
That's usually the case, right? Like it's not all Stoops' turn. It's gray. There's not a lot of black and white in this business.
Yeah. He's in a good spot. And I do wonder if this flirtation now, he looks back as he goes into the transfer portal, goes into finishing off this recruiting class and says, you know what? I am in a really good spot.
Right now, Kentucky's got the number 22 recruiting class, and it's loaded in their front seven too. Brian Robinson, the Smith twins, and Corbin, a bunch of talented edges, a bunch of great linebackers. They got a shutdown corner from Cincinnati into Ryan Nichols. They've got a quarterback, a top 100 quarterback. Stoops has never had one of those in Cutter Boley. And then you look at the portal landscape, and you're going to have to I think the biggest apprehension of your Kentucky fan going in this offseason is that last year they went in the portal and they said, we're going to invest in the offense. They did all right on the offensive line, and that turned out well. But then your return on investment, Ray Davis had a 1,000-yard season, but it was a little up and down, a little consistent. Devin Leary was not what you thought he was going to be. And now you're going to have to go and you're going to have to get a running back. You're going to have to get a quarterback. Will Rogers from Mississippi State is an early name that we're kind of keeping an eye on. He entered the portal, but it's also an air raid guy, right? Like, how's that going to work?
Not what Liam Cohen runs, for sure.
Exactly. So it's I know, like, I can say that moving forward next year that Mark Stoops and Liam Cohen are under an agreement that the offense is going to look a lot different, not only incorporating a little bit of spread offense, but the days of huddling after every snap are over, right? That they're going to play faster. They've been one of the slowest teams in all of college football the last 2 years, so they're going to speed things up. I can say that confidently, but even if they go and get XYZ top transfer quarterback and great running back and receivers, there is going to be a little trepidation where now you really got to show me. You got to prove it to me because Kentucky fans have fallen for that before. So go out and get it done. He's got some excitement around now, Andy, but there's going to be a fair share of naysayers, and I do think that's when Stoops is at his best, right? That's the Youngstown in him, the chip on his shoulder.
Just keep Deion Walker. That's all I have to say. Keep Deion Walker. Nick Roush, thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure, Andy.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.